Welcome to episode 84 of Norse Myths, Legends, and Folktales. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we begin the Saga of Thorstein and learn what Hunvor must do to save herself from marrying the brute Harek the Ironhead in part 1 and 2 of the story of Viking's Son. The beginning of this saga is that a king named Loge ruled the country which is north of Norway. Now, Loge was larger and stronger than any man in that country. His name was lengthened from Los to Haloge, and after him the country was called Hogalon. Loge was the fairest of men, and his strength and stature was like unto that of his kinsmen, the giants, from whom he descended. His wife was Glod, a daughter of Grim, of Grimsgard, which is situated in Jotunheim in the north, and Jotunheim was at that time called Elvegar. Grim was a great berserk. His wife was Alvor, a sister of Ulf the Old. He ruled that kingdom which lies between two rivers, both of which were called Elves, taking their name from him. The river south of his kingdom, dividing it from Gotland, the country of King Goat, was called Goat's Elf, in other words, Goat's River, the river Gota in the southwestern part of the present Sweden. The one north of it was called Rom's Elf, named after King Rom, and the kingdom of the latter was called Romsrick. The land governed by King Alf was called Alfheim, and all his offspring are related to the elves. They were fairer than any other people, save the giants. King Alf was married to Bringerd, a daughter of King Rom of Romrick. She was a large woman, but she was not beautiful, because her father, King Rom, was ugly-looking, and hence ugly-looking and large men are called great Roms. King Haloge and his wife, Queen Glod, had two daughters named Eisa and Eimyrja, which means embers. Now these maidens were the fairest in the land on account of their parentage, for their father and mother were both very fair. But as fire and light make dark things bright, so these things took their names from the above-named maids. They lived with Haloge, two jarls named Vilfil and Veste, both of whom were large and strong men, and they were the warders of the king's land. One day the jarls went to the king, Vilfil, to woo Eimyrja, and Veste to woo Eisa, but the king refused both, on which account they grew so angry that they soon afterward carried the maids off, fleeing with them out of the land, and thus putting themselves out of his reach. But the king declared them outlaws in his kingdom, hindered them by witchcraft from ever again becoming dwellers in his land, and moreover enchanted their kinsmen, making them also outlaws, and deprived them of the benefit of their estates forever. Vesti settled in an island or home which carried Bolgun's home, Bornholm, and became the father of Bu and Sigurd, named Cape. Vilfil sailed further to the east and established himself in an island called Vilfil's Isle. With his wife Eimyrja he got a son, Viking by name, who in his early youth became a man of great stature and extraordinary strength. There was a king who was called Ring, who ruled a fylke of Sweden. With his queen he had an only child, a daughter by the name of Hunvor, a maiden of unrivaled beauty and education. She had a magnificent bower, and was attended by a suite of maidens. Ingeborg called the maiden, who was next to her in position, and she was a daughter of Herfin, jarl of Woolen Acre. Most people said that Ingeborg was not inferior to the daughter of the king in any respect, excepting in strength and wisdom, which Hunvor possessed in a higher degree than all others in the land. Many kings and princes wooed Ingeborg, but she refused them all. She was thought to be a woman of boundless pride and insolence, and it was also talked by many that her pride and insolence might some day receive a check in some way or another. Thus, time passed on for a while. There was a mountain back of the king's residence so high that no human path traversed it. One day, a man, if he might be called so, came down from the mountain. He was larger and more fierce-looking than any person that had before been seen, and he looked more like a giant than like a human being. In his hand he held a bayonet like two-pointed pike. This happened while the king was sitting at the table. This Rom, or ugly-looking fellow, came to the door of the hall and requested to be permitted to enter, but the porters refused to admit him. Then he smote the porters with his pike and pierced both of them from breast to back, one being pierced by one point of the pike and the other by the other, whereupon he lifted both of them over his head and threw their corpses down upon the ground behind him. Then, entering the door, he approached the king's throne, and thus addressed him. As I, King Ring, have honored you so much as to visit you, I think it your duty to grant my request. The king asked what the request might be and what his name was. He answered, My name is Harek the Ironhead, and I am the son of King Cole Croppenbach, the humpback of India. But my errand is that I wish you to place your daughter, your country, and your subjects in my hands, and I think most people will say that it is better for the kingdom that I rule it instead of you, who are destitute of strength and manhood, and moreover enfeebled by age. But, as it may seem humiliating to you to surrender your kingdom, I will agree on my part to marry your daughter Hunvor, but if this is not satisfactory to you, I will kill you, take possession of your kingdom, and make Hunvor my concubine. Now the king felt sorely perplexed, for all the people were grieved at this conversation. Then said the king, It seems to me that we ought to know what she will answer. To this Harek assented. Then Hunvor was sent for, and the matter was explained to her. She said, I like the looks of this man very well, although he seems likely to treat me with severity. But I consider him perfectly worthy of me. If I marry him, nevertheless, I wish to ask whether no ransom can be paid and I be free. Yes, there can, answered Harek, if the king will try a holmgang with me within 4 nights, or procure another man in his stead, then all power shall be surrendered to the one slaying the other in the duel. Certainly, answered Hunvor. None can be found who is able to subdue you in a duel. Nevertheless, I will agree to your proposition. After this, Harek went out, but Hunvor betook herself to her bower, weeping bitterly. Then the king asked his men if there was nobody among them who regarded his daughter Hunvor a sufficient prize for which to risk his life in a holmgang with Harek. But although all wished to marry her, yet nobody was willing to risk the duel, looking upon it as certain death. Many also said that this fate was deserved by her, since she had refused so many, and marrying Harek would be a check to her pride. She had a manservant by name Aemond, a fellow faithful to her and to be trusted in all matters. This man she sent for straight away on the same day, saying to him, It will not prove advisable to keep quiet. I want to send you away. Take a boat and row to the island which lies outside of Woolen Acre, and is called Vilfil's Isle. On the island there is a byre, a farmhouse, and thither you must go and arrive there tomorrow at nightfall. You are to enter the western door of the byre, and when you have entered you will see a sprightly old man and an elderly woman. Any other persons you will not see. They have a son by name Viking, who is now 15 years old and a man of great ability. But he will not be present. I hope he will be able to help us out of our troubles. If not, I fear there will scarcely be any help for us. You must keep out of sight. But if you happen to see a third person, then throw this letter on his lap and hurry home without delay." Aemond, with a company of 11 men, went on board a ship and sailed to Vilfil's Isle. He goes ashore alone and proceeds to the byre, where he finds the firehouse and places himself behind the door. The bond farmer was sitting by the fire with his wife, and he seemed to Aemond a man of brave countenance. The fire was almost burnt out, and the house was but faintly lighted by the embers. Said the woman, "I think, my dear Vilfil, that it would prove to our advantage if our son Viking should present himself, for no one seems to be offering himself for combat, and the time for the duel with Harek is close at hand." "I do not think it advisable," Eimyrja answered he, "for our son is yet young and rash, ambitious and careless. It will be sudden death, for he should be induced to fight with Harek. Nevertheless, it is for you to manage this matter as you think best." Presently a door opened back of the bond, and a man of wonderful stature entered, taking his seat by the side of his mother. Aemond threw the letter on the lap of Viking, ran to the ship, came to Hunvor, and told her how he had done his errand. "Fate will now have to settle the matter," said Hunvor. Viking took the letter, in which he found a greeting from the king's daughter, and moreover a promise that she would be his wife if he would fight with Harek the Ironhead. At this Viking turned pale, observing which Vilfil asked him what the letter had said, and Viking showed him the letter. "This I knew," said Vilfil, "and it would have been better, Eimyrja, if I had decided this matter myself when we talked about it a little while ago. But what do you propose to do?" Says Viking, "Well, would it not be well to save the princess?" Replied Vilfil, "It will be sudden death to you if you fight with Harek." I will run the risk," answered Viking. "Then there is no remedy," said Vilfil, "but I will give you an account of his family and of himself." And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back with more tales, many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.